Welcome to Mindshock. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and you are listening to the Mindshock Live Q&A 16th edition. Here on the Mindshock Live Q&As, anything goes. I attempt to get to each and every question in the live chat, and we attempt to answer all of them in typical Mindshock fashion with logic and reason. At the forefront, quickly going extinct in the world, as anybody who has looked out the window or stepped outside has noticed, or turned on the idiot box, of course. If you want to help support Mindshock, help logic and reason return to this world where it is quickly going extinct, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell for notifications if notifications are still not coming through. Like and comment and share more videos. That's how the YouTube algorithm works. Or you can just go to youtube.com/Mindshock. Or you could even sign up as a free member on Patreon. Those updates should actually work. YouTube, of course, kinda sketchy with the shadow banning and the censoring. You could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way. So, without further ado, let's take some questions. We never know where these live Q&As are going to go, which is what makes them so fun. Sometimes we're talking about interdimensional reptilian shapeshifters. Sometimes we're talking about Steven Seagal's extensive filmography. And anything and everything in between. Sometimes we're talking David Hasselhoff. Sometimes we're talking flat earth. Sometimes we're talking wiggers like Vanilla Ice. It's anything goes here on Mindshock. I do have a Vanilla Ice podcast coming up. Quite an intriguing individual is one Vanilla Ice. We got Scott Steiner in the house here. Scott Steiner? Of the legendary Steiner brothers? Scott Steiner, Big Papa Pump in the house here? Is this the real Scott Steiner? I mean, Scott Steiner has had some of the most legendary mic work in the history of the pro wrestling game. That one botched Frankensteiner was kind of weird, though. Yeah, everybody hollers when they hear Scott Steiner. Now, I do have a question for Scott Steiner. Let's flip the game here. Bruce McGuire's going to ask some questions. How come Rick Steiner never made any noise? Supposedly he's the better of the wrestlers from what I've read. The more technical, superior wrestler would be Rick Steiner. But he never seemed to be as famous as Big Papa Pump. We got the usual suspects in the house. Run Boston Bear. Scott Hawkins saying it's his first time here. Welcome. Les Xylophone. I think deep diving Dwayne Fusilier is a must. Dude has been MKing people since the attempted assassination of Nixon. He has had his hands in every major event from that to 9/11. That would be an interesting deep dive. That would be interesting. Quite a few coincidental overlaps in the career of Dwayne Fusilier. I like the bill. Says Scott Peterson had the worst plan in history if he did it. Did he think no one would notice a pregnant woman go missing? Obviously there would be media and Frey would find out. Scott would obviously be interviewed. Yeah, there's a lot of problems with the Scott Peterson case. What kind of gets me are all the clueless goofs who just believed what they saw in the idiot box and thought, oh, he's a cheater, therefore he must be a murderer. I mean, the level of goofery in the Scott Peterson case is quite unique. I mean, it's up there with the Stephen Avery type cases where the same corrupt cops frame a guy when there's not millions on the line. And yet they wouldn't do it again. I mean, just the level of gopher in the Stephen Avery case and the Scott Peterson case. Quite goofy. Oh, Breek says, Bruce, what do you think about ultrasounds? Like, what do you mean? For pregnant women? Or just the technology in general? Are you asking if ultrasounds are a sound technology? Or you think there could be side effects? I mean, all of them have side effects. It does appear to be one of the safer ones. Like x-rays, of course, are much deadlier. Or those microwave scans or any of that stuff. Ultrasound is older tech, and I'm sure there's some kind of side effects, but they don't appear to be quite as bad as the other tech. Scott Steiner says, how come you don't talk about Jew? Rick was a Jew. Your brother. So wait a second. Scott Steiner, are you saying, you're saying Rick, your brother, was a Jew, but you're not? That's interesting phrasing. Aren't both of your last names Rechsteiner? Rechsteiner? Is that how you pronounce that? You want to go down some biblical rabbit holes? Yeah, it's probably not a YouTube convo. Les Xylophone says, I've been seeing a lot of World War II stuff on Twitter. So we could talk World War II a little bit. Obviously, the victors write the histories. That's another one, too. Like, all these statist, bootlicking cultists, everything from scientism cultists to your classic statist cultist. I mean, all these brain-dead goofs must know that the victors write the history books, yet they trust the history books. I mean, is this just a unique type of mental disability? Everything from the Civil War, World War I, World War II, just the level of gophery from we can call them mainstream bootlickers, authority-worshipping cultists. These goofs know the victors write the history books, yet they still put their blind faith and trust in the history books. I mean, this is just off-the-charts gophery. Obrick says, yeah, exactly. Do you think ultrasounds have any side effects? Touchy subject people hate talking about. It's kind of hard to imagine that any kind of technology wouldn't have some kind of side effects. But it appears just all of these health problems, it appears that other technologies are a lot more lethal, so to speak. Flatless in the house here. Heracles. Gen A. Let's talk about the Synagogue of Satan tribe. Yeah, you guys really want to get this stream shut down. You know what's weird? I always thought that was weird. Like, you can doubt Stalin and Mao killing millions, murdering millions, far more than allegedly Hitler did. Or whatever. Hitler's handlers. Some believe he's a figurehead position. I actually do have quite a few rabbit holes explored regarding Hitler's origin story. Do you guys really want to go into that? I'm not going to go into numbers of murdered or anything like that. Although, yeah, if you really want to play this game, I don't know if we want to play this game. Do we want to play this game? It is Mindshock after all. Les Xylophone wants to play this game. Scotty Steiner wants to play this game. If Scott Steiner says go full send, we have to go full send. If we're getting shut down or not, how can anyone disobey Big Papa Pump? Man, Scott Steiner was pretty unhinged back in the WCW days. Are Scott Steiner's biceps fake? That's a good mind-shocking question, isn't it? Let's look at the official numbers here. These are the official numbers. Isn't it kind of weird how nobody really talks about all the other casualties of WW2? So if these numbers are correct, like these are the official numbers here on Mindshock, I do not claim anything is true or untrue. These are the official numbers. 70 to 85 million casualties. Each and every one of them can be questioned. But of this other group of 6, for some reason those can't be questioned. For whatever reason, no anti-defamation league exists. No other anti-defamation league exists for any other genocides in history. Any of these statist slaughters known as democide, the number one cause of death in human history. Every single one of them can be questioned except for one. I'm not saying that's weird. I'm sure there's a perfectly good explanation for that. Now, I don't have that explanation, but I am sure, I am absolutely certain the powers that be will provide a perfectly good explanation why there only exists an anti-defamation league for one of these democide campaigns. Alright, I missed a few questions here. I will get to some mind-shocking facts, alleged facts, about Hitler's origins, if we're going there. Blame Scott Steiner. Jose Luis De Howe says, what is your take on the whole federal elections to come? In my opinion, these will be the most staged ones since Nixon. Okay. You guys wanna... Okay, I have a children's level video on what I think about elections. Do you guys want to see it? I have a feeling YouTube's about to get real glitchy. Just a feeling. If they're getting glitchy over NASA occult top secret patches, they're probably gonna get glitchy over anything to do with Adolf. I have a little jingle video that should probably be played in every single indoctrination facility in every single land, including the lands beyond Antarctica. But who knows if they have democracy systems set up, republic systems set up, any kind of systems set up. Oh yeah, we're getting glitchy. That's funny. That's funny. I don't think YouTube's gonna let me put up any videos. We're getting glitchy. Let me see if I can come up with a workaround. Alright, it might work here. Let's see. Let's see if this works. This is a little jingle. A little jingle that should answer all questions regarding voting.
Hey, boys and girls, that important... Hey, boys and girls, that important day is almost here, Election Day, and we're counting on you to do your duty and vote. Yeah, your vote is statistically irrelevant and won't change anything, but it's still important that you participate in the process. Of course, voting isn't going to do you any good. It never did, and it never will. You know that. But we still need you to participate in the pseudo-religious ritual called democracy. And here's why. You gotta vote to keep up the illusion that the people are in control. You gotta vote for one of two narcissistic megalomaniacs with no soul. You gotta vote so when they rob you blind they can say it was with your consent. You gotta vote so that when they lie, cheat and steal, you think it's you they represent. Yeah, you gotta vote.
I'm allowed to hide in a booth and press a button, and that makes me important.
Worried that you're uninformed and know nothing about the candidates? Who cares? It doesn't matter which empty suit puppet you support. What matters is that you continue to legitimize your own subjugation and enslavement by playing the game. You see, voting lets your masters know that they can do whatever they want to you, and all you'll ever do is pathetically beg for mercy. So pointlessly obsess over elections while they extract from you every scrap of wealth, dignity, or freedom you had left. You gotta vote to keep up the illusion that the people are in control. You gotta vote for one of two narcissistic megalomaniacs with no soul. You gotta vote so when they rob you blind they can say it was with your consent. You gotta vote so that when they try and rule the world you'll think it's you they represent. Yeah, you gotta vote. Repeat after me, boys and girls. You gotta vote. Choosing between two slave masters is just as good as being free. You gotta vote. The politicians only want power so they can serve you. You gotta vote. If we didn't have them ruling us, we'd be killing and eating each other. You gotta vote. Extortion and thuggery are good things when they're called law. You gotta vote. Hey, they're elected, so they have the right to do anything they want to you. You gotta vote. People who blindly obey the state are noble, upstanding citizens. You gotta vote. People who disobey the politicians are criminals and terrorists. You gotta vote. If you don't vote, you can't complain. You gotta vote.
If you're finally ready to accept the fact that your vote means nothing, and if you want to know what is needed to actually achieve freedom and justice, then you need to read The Most Dangerous Superstition, available at Amazon.com.
The reason I let that ad run for his book, it's actually a really good book. Rock and Rose, not a flat earther. I actually will do a logical analysis on his interview regarding flat earth because it's kind of ironic because Larkin Rose is a genius. I mean, this man is an absolute genius, but his blind spot appears to be scientism. Because he says don't take the word of authorities, of power-hungry, corrupt authorities, but he does when it comes to flat Earth. Any other subject he appears not to. I mean, I don't know about other biotech. I mean, I don't know where he is on vaccines or any of that stuff. But with flat Earth, he fell for every logical fallacy that he clearly calls out regarding statism. That's what's unique about Larkin. You guys want another Larkin jingle? He's got quite a few. These are all on his Larkin Rose channel on YouTube, so you guys can check out his channel. He's got some really hilarious videos. I mean, part of his genius is how funny he is in calling out the ludicrous nature of statist bootlickers. I'm going to put up a funny song here. He doesn't believe in the state, but I do wonder whether or not he's going to flag these as copyright, even though it's all fair use. And we're discussing all of this in fair use fashion, with nothing but fair use going on here. I mean, we're drowning in fair use. There's just so much fair use here. Everything's fair use about this fair use analysis of this fair use video. He's got another jingle that's highly entertaining that I'll put up in a second. I will try to catch up with the questions in a second. Got a couple, a little behind here. Okay. Okay, so does that answer your question, Jose Luis, on my take on federal election? Okay, Les Xylophone, did Hitler really try to have peace talks with England? We'll get into that. Flatless says, a statism election effectiveness podcast would be fitting here soon. Maybe we'll make it this one. I got a couple more videos we can go over. I've been saving to unleash on the Mindshock podcast. Perhaps today will be the day that they are unleashed. Scott Hawkins says, I'm leaning flat earth, but my brother's always talking about the Anunnaki coming from the heavens, which I believe is the firmament. Any advice or thoughts how you could share with me on how to respond? Well, you obviously have to look into Project Bluebeam. And regarding Anunnaki, you have a few different options here. If they're not a psyop and they are real, one, they could be physical beings from the lands beyond Antarctica, or two, they could be interdimensional reptilian shapeshifters, as David Icke and many others describe them. Plenty of other options. Jen A says the Jews declared war on Germany, not the other way around. Not entirely true. Perhaps I probably should do a World War II podcast. Would get that shut down so fast on YouTube. But I'm sure you know Rothschilds own the newspapers, so they put all this false propaganda in the newspaper. Basically, they started the false flag in the newspaper that the so-called Jews were anti-Germany, all that. So all of the anti-Jew sentiment came directly from the Rothschild-owned newspapers. Perhaps I'll put some of those microfiche snapshots on the screen a little later. I like the bill says, what do you think about the Walsh document from the Columbine case? I have an episode on that coming up. Heracles says, I think they are the fallen angels, the Watchers. The Book of Enoch is a good place to start. Yeah, we need to do a deep dive on that one. Run Boston Bear, I posted a WW2 convo that happened on the Earth Awakenings Discord server yesterday. It's on my Rumble. Witsit and others debating the topic, and it got quite heated. That's cool. O'Briggs says not a single bomb dropped on Buckingham Palace or Parliament building during London bombings of World War II. I'm sure that's all coincidental. Les Xylophone said, didn't Stalin kill more people? So Stalin and Mao, so according to the official narratives, Stalin and Mao killed far more. Gleam has a very important question here. Is Fight the Flat Earth and McToon's hairline receding at an accelerated rate of 9.8 millimeters per second square? Is that mm? You're talking about millimeters? Truth Seeker Investigations up in here. Heracles says his mother worked for the Rothschilds. Adolf was a bastard. Well, the rabbit hole goes very, very deep there. Jen A says, I wouldn't vote if they ran for the town dog catcher. Okay, I think we're gonna have to go deep and explore some statism here. I've had a couple videos I wanted to put up here for discussion. Perhaps we will do that now. Heracles says, Bruce, random question. Did you ever watch the show Moral Oral? No, I have not. Views says, WTF Mind Shock. Tsutsaka in the chat here, our resident Dunning-Kruger goof. When are you going to do a logical analysis of why Doom Eternal slaps? I will be doing a podcast on Doom, the foundation of Doom, the origins of Doom, and the Illuminati overlap, of which there is plenty. It's also tangentially related to the Illuminati card game, believe it or not, and I have a podcast on that coming up as well. Love, Peace, Unity says, watched 6 hours of the Seagal podcast. Wow, he truly is the master. How could anyone deny? I do not know how anyone can deny the greatness of Seagal. The real question here is Seagal the Messiah. That's where we're at this point. You only watch 6 hours? There's another 20 hours where that came from. You can check out the Steven Seagal playlist for all of them, but I'm putting together a few Jumbo podcasts. I aired episode 1 of the Jumbo the other day. There's 2 more Jumbos. It's over 20 hours of Steven Seagal receipts. Jen A says, Jesus was 3 days, 3 nights in the heart of the earth. He took the keys of death and hell upon his resurrection. The earth is not flat. Wait, what does the heart of the earth have to do with the shape of the earth? Heart itself is an anagram for earth. We can get to that. The Bible clearly describes the earth as a clay seal. Seems pretty flat. I'm not saying it is flat here on Mindshock. I do not claim anything is true or untrue. Tsutsaka says, sounds boring. Is that why you're here? Because Mindshock is so boring, you just have to be here for the live Q&A. You couldn't miss it, Tsutsaka. It was so boring, you had to drop whatever you were doing to be here for this live Q&A. All right, let's listen to another jingle of the one and only. The one and only Larkin Rose. If YouTube will allow, which it does not want to. If you guys only knew the amount of workarounds I have to engage in just to get some of these videos playing.
country, where at least I know I'm free. Free to choose which lying crooks will walk all over me. I earn my living, working proud and strong, but the IRS wiped out my bank while I made up this song. I hear the people calling this the home of the brave. So why are we all scared to death of some crackpot in a cave? They want me to cross an ocean to die for my country's flag, but the politicians don't want me to have no 30-round mag. I thought it was awful nice of them to give stuff away for free, but I felt a wee tad differently when they sent the bill to me. But I still feel so very lucky that I'm allowed to vote, to choose which gang of thugs will have their jackboots on my throat. I love my country, where at least I know I'm free. Free to choose which lying crooks will walk all over me. Yes, I love my country, but I'm damn sure this ain't it. Poor Constitution, those DC liars treat that thing like, well, I love my country, but I ain't sure where it went. When Karl Marx explained his plan, I think this is what he meant. Yes, I love my country, sure like to get it back. Things just haven't been the same since that false flag attack, but I love my country. Yes.
That sure cut out at an interesting point, didn't it? So that video is pretty old, obviously. I think it was from around the time of Obama's first or second term. Oh, Break in the chat. Are we going flat Earth right now? I think Southern Pole and Southern Pole Star and Southern Flights destroys flat Earth. How so? Southern Pole Star. You mean how the Southern Cross isn't visible from the Northern Hemisphere? Or is it? Did you not watch the videos? You can clearly see the Southern Cross from well above the equator. Well above the alleged equator, if the Earth is a globe. Alright, let me go through a couple more, and then we'll do the definitive statist video. The definitive. Are there any statists in the chat, by the way? Let's do a poll. See if we got any statists up in here. Raised by Gypsies says, voting is nothing more than a nod of compliance to the system. Exactly. The other thing nobody thinks about, like all these brain-dead goofs talking about politics, like, I mean, Whoopi Goldberg comes to mind, of course, but all these goofs threatening to move out of the U.S. if their candidate doesn't win, are they that brain-dead that they don't understand by casting their vote in the first place? They're agreeing in the system. They're consenting to the system that if their guy doesn't, or gal, or who knows, I have no idea what Kamala Kamala, whatever, Harris, whatever Harris identifies as. I don't know what that is. I don't know what Harris is. But whatever Harris identifies as, if their candidate doesn't win, they're actually consenting to be ruled by by whoever doesn't, even if it's not their candidate. By voting, they're consenting to be ruled by either their candidate or the other candidate selected by their fellow citizens. That's the consent of a voting system. That's the democracy they're always crying about preserving, even though the United States is a constitutional republic. But that's something nobody thinks about. And the old adage, if you don't vote, you can't complain. I mean, I think George Carlin had actually. Let's play some Carlin here. Because instead of me explaining it, let's just watch the clip. YouTube's definitely not gonna like this one. Oh, we still gotta get to the Adolf, or we gotta go Adolf origins, statism. So let's finish with statism. Once again, I had no idea this live Q&A would go this direction, but that's what's so fun about these live Q&As. Oh, Breek says, Bruce, do you have a favorite fiction book? Ooh, that's a tough one. Oh man, that is so tough. Do I think there's a fiction book that's or a favorite of mine? Not necessarily the best one, but the one I like the most. That's too tough, my friend. That's too tough. Way too tough. It's kind of like movies. Like sometimes the answer depends on your mood or a subcategory. I think it's a little easier to go by genre. If you want to go conspiratorial, I mean, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, I mean, wow. I actually like that more than 1984. I think it's a little bit more accurate of the fascist biotechnocracy. Alright, let's listen to some Carlin. Carlin's thoughts on voting and whether or not you have a right to complain if you don't vote are pretty interesting, to say the least. I mean, and like all geniuses, Carlin had his blind spot as well. Carlin's blind spot was God. Carlin did not believe in a creator.
Now, there's one thing you might have noticed I don't complain about. Now, there's one thing you might have noticed I don't complain about. Politicians. Everybody complains about politicians. Everybody says they suck. Yeah! Well, where do people think these politicians come from? They don't fall out of the sky. They don't pass through a membrane from another reality. They come from American parents and American families, American homes, American schools, American churches, American businesses, and American universities, and they're elected by American citizens. This is the best we can do, folks. This is what we have to offer. It's what our system produces. Garbage in, garbage out.
Now, as hilarious as that is, how does he know they're not reptilian shapeshifters from another dimension, though? All right, in our poll here, are you a statist? We have 13% statist in here, 13% too trigger to answer, 74% non-statists. So of the 13% statists in here, I hope they will chime in as we discuss statism. Oh, Breek says, no, the Southern Cross is seen from Australia, South Africa, and Argentina. Incorrect, my friend. Incorrect. I actually played videos of Southern Cross observation, clear Southern Cross observations from well above the alleged equator. Well above. Did you not You said you saw the video on Flat Earth Astronomy, so I played it in that video. I could play it again for you if you want. I mean, these are non-Flat Earth channels. These are just astronomy channels, many years old, where you could clearly see the Southern Cross from above the alleged equator. Like, well above. We're not talking about within a couple miles of the equator. Okay, Tutsaka asked about Dunning-Kruger. That will be part 2 of Pretend Reality. Probably tomorrow night. Scott Steiner says Illuminati card game podcast would be sick. Yeah, I've been compiling information on the Illuminati card game for many years now. It will be the most comprehensive topic on the podcast on the subject. Each and every card examined. In every iteration of the game, of every generation. I'm just trying to track down information on the prototype of the game. It's kind of hard to find the cards from the prototype that was not available retail. Okay. Does David Icke think we landed on the moon too? I'm actually not sure about that. Did David Icke subscribe to John Lear's... So John Lear said that there were dream factories on Mars and that the moon was some kind of soul harvesting. I don't know if they thought it was a physical... Yeah, it's kind of tough to say. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Val Johnson asks, why do you think Larkin Rose is so triggered by Flat Earth? I think it's just a blind spot. Because I think because Larkin is such a, like, the smarter someone is, the more glaring their blind spots could be. I mean, look at Ben Shapiro and Quack Scenes. Now, Ben Shapiro might be a full-on shill operative, but he's clearly quite sharp in a lot of topics. And he's got some huge blind spots, unless people think he's acting about those blind spots. I'm not sure. Maybe he is. I don't think Larkin's acting about Flat Earth, though. Views with a Z says, Bruce, I have a question more in your usual wheelhouse that no one in comedy or conspiratainment will touch. Wow, conspiratainment. That's the first time I've heard that term, and it is awesome. Thank you, Views, for bringing that to my attention. Conspiratainment. Where did you hear that term, Views? I'm actually surprised I've never heard it. It's got a catchy, it's pretty catchy. Conspiratainment. It's like edutainment, but in the conspiratorial realm. What is your question, Views? Les Xylophone says, is everything a power move, a psyop? Yeah, pretty much. I mean, why wouldn't it be? I mean, humans like power, and criminals are out there. I mean, I'm sure there's some things that aren't intentional power moves or intentional psyops. Obreek says, vote in the funniest guy if you vote at all. Grunge Truck says, Bill Hicks. Can you imagine if Alex Jones ran for president? Those would be the most hilarious debates. I mean, the campaigns would be so hilarious. Talk about it, conspiratainment. Alex Jones running for president would be peak conspiratainment. Run Boston Bear says, Joe Hanvey is working on a biblical cosmology model. He's finding the Southern Cross can be seen in 4 quadrants at the same time. That's interesting. I haven't seen that yet. Les Xylophone says, this is like when the teacher wheels the TV into a class to watch the reading ring. Oh, Breek says, was Carlin in the club, though? If Bill Hicks being Alex Jones implies that he's... See, that's a curiosity. I'm not sure whether Carlin was in the club or not. Oh, we need to do a deep dive podcast into Carlin. I've watched pretty much all of his comedy specials, and I've watched one of his... I use this all the time. This came from him. You don't need a formal conspiracy when interests converge. This is something clueless coincidence theorists and authority-worshipping cultist bootlickers, they don't have the mental capacity to understand. You don't need these shady guys meeting in a room X-Files style. You just need the interests to converge, i.e., you know, certain medical events requiring certain medical treatments that make certain people money. There doesn't have to be those meetings for that to happen. Wow. Lord Zed in the chat with a legendary question. Bruce, do you think that Trump is L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons' moonchild? And do you know Hubbard Parsons tried to summon goddess? I think it's Lady on Patch. Wow. Okay, we need some rules for some of. I know I say any and all questions will be answered, but some of them, if it requires more than a few minutes to answer, that's going to have to be in a dedicated podcast. I mean, that's quite the rabbit hole there. Heracles asked Sokka, "Did you voted statist, didn't you?" Oh, Breek says, I'm not denying that you could see it above the equator. You just said that earlier. And how could you see it above the equator if the Earth is a globe? Or is it not just pear-shaped? Is it some weird shape with crazy dents in it, so that way you'd be able to see stuff you're not supposed to see? Tsutsaka wants evidence of himself being Dunning-Kruger. Well, you don't have the mental capacity to process the evidence. The evidence are your own comments in every single live chat. Because do you even know what Dunning-Kruger is? If you if you don't have the competency to comprehend your incompetency, then you wouldn't be able to see that your own comments prove your Dunning-Kruger suffering. Lord Zed says, do you think Jesus was from the North Pole and the three wise men got a curse put into them and turned into Yeti? That's why Bigfoot or wizards descend from the three magi. That sounds like a question for Nathan Reynolds. Nathan Reynolds, the first individual I've ever heard mention time-traveling Terminator Bigfoot from Hollow Earth working for death himself, or the Prince of Death. That was interesting. I think he'd probably know more about Jesus, the wise men, and Yeti. Views says Morgan. Wait, what was your question, Views? I think I missed it. That you said nobody would touch. Tsutsaka pretending a clear explanation is an excuse. That much of a narcissist? Is it an excuse, or is it just clearly answering your question in the most accurate way possible? Because how would you be able to comprehend it if you don't have the capacity to comprehend it? Like, what are you expecting from my answer? Views says, I addressed this to Sam Tripoli, anybody in the conspiracy space. Addressed what? What, did I miss it? I don't see your actual question.
If you have selfish, ignorant citizens, you're going to get selfish, ignorant leaders. And term limits ain't going to do you any good. You're just going to wind up with a brand new bunch of selfish, ignorant Americans. So maybe it's not the politicians who suck. Maybe something else sucks around here, like the public. Yeah, the public sucks. There's a nice campaign slogan for somebody. The public sucks. Fuck hope. Fuck hope. Because if it's really just the fault of these politicians, then where are all the other bright people of conscience? Where are all the bright, honest, intelligent Americans ready to step in and save the nation and lead the way? We don't have people like that in this country. Everybody's at the mall. scratching his ass, picking his nose, taking his credit card out of his fanny pack and buying a pair of sneakers with lights in them. So I have solved this little political dilemma for myself in a very simple way. On election day, I stay home. I don't vote. Fuck them. Fuck them. I don't vote. Two reasons I don't vote. First of all, it's meaningless. This country was bought and sold and paid for a long time ago. The shit they shuffle around every 4 years doesn't mean a fucking thing. And secondly, I don't vote because I believe if you vote, you have no right to complain. People like to twist that around, I know. They say, well, if you don't vote, you have no right to complain. But where's the logic in that? If you vote, and you elect dishonest, incompetent people, and they get into office and screw everything up, well, you are responsible for what they have done. You caused the problem. You voted them in. You have no right to complain. I, on the other hand, who did not vote, who, in fact, did not even leave the house on election day, am in no way responsible for what these people have done and have every right to complain as loud as I want about the mess you created that I had nothing to do with. So I know that a little later on this year, you're going to have another one of those really swell presidential elections that you like so much. You'll enjoy yourselves. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm sure as soon as the election is over, your country will improve immediately. As for me, I'll be home on that day doing essentially the same thing as you. The only difference is when I get finished masturbating, I'm going to have a little something to show for it, folks. Thank you very much.
So that's how Carlin explained it, because if you vote, you're consenting through your participation. You're consenting that one of these candidates has the legitimacy to be the president by your vote. You are consenting that your vote, who you voted for, might not end up being the president, but you consented to the voting system you are participating in. Tsutsaka, if your comment is the proof, again, you can't explain, it can't be dumbed down any further. You don't understand. I said, look at any of your comments. You don't understand anything posted. Do you have a comment? Are you making the positive claim that you actually comprehend what is being said and that your comments reflect comprehension? Is that your positive claim? Burden of proof is on positive claims. Are you claiming that your comments are lucid and examples of comprehension? Hand-hold you preschool style through every single comment you made and show you how it doesn't make any sense when you don't have the mental capacity to understand that explanation? Is that what you're asking for? And the fact that you continue asking is the proof. Yes, I did make a positive claim that you're Dunning-Kruger, which you prove with every post, like you just proved again. Because if you understood, you wouldn't be asking that. That's the whole point. If you weren't Dunning-Kruger, you wouldn't be asking that. Okay. I know you didn't make that claim. I'm asking you if you are going to claim that your comments demonstrate comprehension. Okay. Anyway, Tsutsaka's got some kind of fetish for humiliating himself. Like, his dedication to humiliating himself. I mean, he's been doing this for, what, a year? I mean, it's pretty incredible. Scott Hawkins, I do have all comments enabled, live chat, not just top chat. I actually tell people to do that because a lot of people don't see comments. YouTube actually removes and shadow bans and censors comments. That's not me doing that. That's YouTube, so perhaps YouTube got his comment. I think it might still show up for him, but nobody else will see it. Might need to add dashes to some of the words if there's specific words that are being censored. Oh, here's another proof of Tsutsaka. Spectroscopy needs to be in a container. Spectroscopy. Do you even know the origin of spectroscopy? I went over that. So, classic Dunning-Kruger quote of all time, which is your own. Spectroscopy was originally developed using prisms. You don't know what a prism is? You think it's a non-physical... Actually, pyramid prisms, but... You don't know what a prism is? So again, that's another example of Dunning-Kruger. You're too incompetent to realize how incompetent you are because you don't know anything about spectroscopy, and yet you're saying that spectroscopy needs to be in a container is a classic Dunning-Kruger quote of all time. So that's another clear demonstration of your suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect because you don't have the mental capacity to know what spectroscopy is, how it was developed, or how it works. Okay, anyway, I'm not going to spend any more time on Tsutsaka. I think he likes it when he's not... He likes humiliating himself, and then he likes it when his own stupidity is clearly pointed out. Yeah, views, ask your question again, maybe add some dashes to some of the words. Taylor with Stitchin says, may I ask, knowing what Nick the Hat has been putting on YouTube and Dex about True Serum and giving it to Katie, would you guys be okay with him giving it to, I don't know, Candace and Don Wells? Talking about the Summer Wells case and Truth Serum. You don't need Truth Serum, you need brain fingerprint scanning. I'm going to do a dedicated podcast on that. But a brain fingerprint scan is kind of like... I mean, it actually has been used in court on at least one occasion. It just measures your brainwaves, so it doesn't matter whether you're trying to lie or not. That's taken out of the equation. It only measures the brainwave recognition response. Oh, Miranda actually brought that up. Okay, brain fingerprint scan is what it's called. A former government operative or individual who worked with government, the CIA, the FBI, the military, they all use brain fingerprint scanning. I believe he even had a $100,000 or $150,000 reward for anybody who could beat the brain fingerprint scan. Because obviously there's a lot of people out there that could beat polygraphs. So far, nobody, at least on record, has been able to defeat the brain fingerprint scan. Val Johnson asks, what do you recommend as a basic logical fallacy training video? I actually have one here on Mindshock. A few of them, Logic 101, Logical Fallacies 101, An Introduction to Logic and Basic Fallacies. I'll put the link in the chat right now for you. So it's right there, Val. Okay. Jen A says, the United States is a corporation. Research the Act of 1871. Lord Zed says, if no one votes, they can't lie and say this guy won. Good point. ME7cast asks, why the hell aren't you in a position of power? Because I do not seek to subjugate my fellow man, my friend. Kill the Bank asks, have you ever done a deep dive in World War I, World War II? This may not be the place to do it. That's what we were actually talking about at the beginning of this live Q&A. I'm going to get into a little bit on the origins of Adolf. Tsutsaka, go watch, well, you have probably already seen it. In so-called Professor Dave getting obliterated by Flat Earth Dave in their debate from some time ago, I went over all of that on how spectroscopy works. So asking a question like the prism contains the light, that's another example of Dunning-Kruger. Because if you weren't suffering from Dunning-Kruger, you wouldn't have asked that question. So that's another clear demonstration of your incompetency. Oh, wow. Oh, Breek with a crazy one. Is Stephen Hawking an actor? Wow. Oh, man. Or was he an actor if he's no longer alive? Caitlin asks, did you do a Watergate or Whitewater video Clinton's Vince Foster? No, not yet. Okay, here we go. View says, I heard it conspiratainment online. There's a theory that Sam Kinison was unalived organically to tie up loose ends for a Politico he used to be drinking buddies with, similar method to how Morgan Freeman got rid of his problem with an enraged boyfriend. I do not, don't know about that one. I'd have to do some quite some research on that. I have seen the theory that Morgan Freeman deserves his own deep dive podcast. There's a theory that Morgan Freeman is Jimi Hendrix. All the conspiratorially minded individuals might have already heard that one. Notice says, where did you get the number of millions murdered for each of these guys? This is the official narrative. So this is what the current history books say. From what I understood, Mao murdered in a ratio of like 66 to 100 million because a lot of them were off the books farmers. Yeah, I don't know why that only says 13. I mean, this is weird. I mean, this is a meme, so I don't know where they sourced it. I thought it, yeah, actually, looking at this particular one, yeah, this does not look accurate at all, actually. These numbers are really low, unfortunately. Unfortunately, I think all of them killed way more. Way more. So, yeah. Yeah, I don't know how accurate this meme is. Thanks for the super chat or sticker. Is that a sticker? Super sticker from Views. Flatless says, Stephen Hawking also lived with ALS for 20 years, while most people with ALS only live for about a few years tops. I think Owen Benjamin actually talked about that. Oh, Flatless, I'd love to hear you do a Waco or Ruby Ridge podcast. Both of those in the works. I've been researching those for a lot of years too, as well as the Oklahoma City bombing. All three of those will be covered in deep dives. Flatless says, Bruce, would you ever cover any cults for a true crime series? Well, I did, I think it was over 9 hours on satanic cult activity, documented and prosecuted. Because a lot of goofs think that was all made up for Satanic Panic. An extensive series. I mean, there's only so much of that stuff I want to look at. You know, staring into the abyss at all, and the abyss staring back into you. I always say this, you need to be aware the abyss is there so you don't fall into it, but spending all your time staring into it, not something I want to do. Okay, so we have one more statist video to go over. And then I'll go into, because I don't want to get shut down just yet with the Adolf stuff. So there's one more video. This is probably the definitive video on statism. It's a little long, but It is probably the best video. I would love to hear anybody counter anything in this video. So all the statists in the chat, there were quite a few according to the poll. Not a ton, but there were a few in the poll. In the chat, we got some statists in here. And I would like their countering any points presented in this particular video. So, I'll throw it up right now.
You cannot begin to imagine in how many ways the world is the opposite of what you have been taught to believe. You see the guy who sells drugs to willing customers so he can feed his family as the scum of the earth, while you see the hypocrite who gives away stolen money in the name of government as a saint. You see the guy who tries to avoid being robbed by the federal thugs as a crook and a tax cheat, but see as virtuous the politician who gives away the same stolen loot to people to whom it does not belong. You see the cop as a good guy when he drags a man away from his friends and family and throws him in prison for 10 years for smoking a leaf. And you see anyone who defends himself from such barbaric fascism as the lowest form of life, a cop killer. In reality, most drug dealers are more virtuous than any government social worker, and prostitutes have far less to be ashamed of than political whores, because they trade only with what is rightfully theirs, and only with those who want to trade with them.
Is anyone able to counter any of the points so far? Thanks for the super chat, Scott Steiner, Big Papa Pump. I really didn't think Scott Steiner, I would have Scott Steiner, the one and only Scott Steiner in the Mindshock chat. Can anybody counter any of the points so far? I mean, Larkin, this is Larkin Rose's audio here overlapping the presentation here. Do any of the statists have any counterpoints here? Especially with prostitutes trading with only what is rightfully theirs, as opposed to politicians or statists voting to steal money from people's pockets and use it for stuff. Miranda asks, what is the name of the other platform Mindshock is on? I have Rumble and Rockfin. If you just search Mindshock Podcast, it should come up. On the top of the YouTube, there should be links too. I don't know if they work, though. Views asks, is Max a character you created, Bruce? He never seems to have heard of anything. Does he live inside a rock like some Norse or Gaelic spirit? No, Maxwell Powers is a real human being. Oh, Breek says prostitution is immoral. Is it, though? Now, I'm not talking about those gaslit, like children or even young adults gaslit into doing it or forced into doing it. But if someone clearly understands what they're doing with their own will and is trading only with willing customers and only with what is rightfully theirs, their own body, is that truly immoral? Now, of course, I would say that the majority of prostitutes are not doing it willingly. I don't mean under physical duress, although unfortunately that is a percentage, but they were, for lack of better terms, gaslit into that profession. They didn't naturally come to want to do that. And also most criminals, even drug dealers, the non-violent drug dealers that are just selling plants, if they're just engaged in free market capitalism with willing customers and trading plants. I mean, imagine putting on a costume and being an armed terrorist, breaking into people's homes for simply engaging in free market capitalism of trading plants with willing adults. The level of goofery of statists defending that is kind of crazy. He didn't say the drug dealers were virtuous. He said they were more virtuous than statists or those supporting violence and stealing from people through the means of government. And if the drug dealer is simply engaging in free market capitalism, like let's say marijuana, that's actually organic and not laced with anything, and if they're just engaged in free market capitalism, I mean, how is that immoral? How is that different than them trading a different plant that's simply not on a statist list? Oh, Breek says, so is selling heroin is pretty immoral? Based on what? So again, we have to only deal, like, let's say 99% of it is immoral because of other things. Because there's violence, coercion, physical or otherwise involved. There's the government stealing everybody's money so that they're in a mentally depressed state and getting poisoned by the air, food, and water by government agencies. So they find themselves in a place in life where that's kind of... It's actually a unique... I forgot who said it. Oh, I really want to remember this. Someone actually said it's a unique... It's almost like a paradox that drugs that harm you actually help you survive. So they're doing both at the same time. They're helping people cope with life situations while destroying them. So again, is it immoral to only trade with what is rightfully yours and only with willing customers if no coercion has taken place? If you haven't heard my podcast on drug addiction, check it out. Because a lot of people judge drug addicts when the truth is anybody could be a drug addict, depending on their life circumstances. Now, not identical circumstances, everybody's different. People might need a different set of circumstances to become a drug addict, but I would say pretty much anybody could be an addict and eventually be a homeless addict if you just switch around the circumstances. So a lot of these people chastising and looking down upon drug addicts, they could easily have been in that position had their life circumstances been different. Kill the Bank says, I don't like the morale of that, but I can't disagree with it at the same time. Oh, I'm not saying it's the right thing to do to deal in drug. I mean, but it's not for me to say. That's the point. It's not for me to put on a costume and get armed and break down somebody's door and throw them in a cage simply because they're engaging in free market capitalism regarding plants with consenting adults. Richie Rich says, Scott Steiner's biceps defies logic and reason. I think we're going to have a problem, Bruce. Well, that's why he's the genetic freakzilla. Yeah, you gotta answer some questions, Scotty, in the chat here. Scott Steiner, Freakzilla, Big Papa Pump, we need to know what the deal is with your biceps. Pinto Sack says, sounds like we're pushing libertarianism here. People need some sort of rules and morals to follow. But that's for them to decide. That's not for someone else to decide for them. Because that would be fascism. Or threaten to rob them and put them in cages if they don't adhere to whatever set of rules and morals. Those hallucinating they have the right to play God and decide for others what those are. I mean, it's just the beginning of the video, but... Jen A with another good point. Far too many are one paycheck away from homelessness. I actually put up the quote in the Pretend Society video that the world is 9 meals away from a complete breakdown of society. Like, if the power goes out and the production lines are cut, I mean, civilization's not going to exist in this current way. Oh, Brick says, if they were selling and smoking heroin in a kid's park, would have a problem there then, Well, so again, kids are not adults. They can't make those decisions for themselves. Similar, a lot of statists don't have a problem with kids going into a store and buying candy with sugar in it. And sugar is not just more addictive than heroin. It's actually more detrimental gram for gram. I believe that's what the studies showed, or close to it. So the dopamine disruption and the neurochemical effects of sugar are so detrimental to children, yet even clueless statists are not advocating for the grocery store owners to be arrested, because they're technically peddling drugs. Sugar is a drug. They're peddling drugs to children. But yeah, obviously, you don't sell heroin to children, even if their parents consent, because again, if the parent consents to you allowing someone to beat their child, that there's still an injured party there. Everything goes back to common law. If there is no injured party, there is no crime. So injuring children, because children cannot make decisions for themselves, so giving them anything detrimental, or even not detrimental, like you'd have to have the consent of the parent, etc. But if there's an injured party, especially children, then there's a huge problem, because now you're injuring people. Now, consenting adults buying drugs from each other, knowing... It's also a different situation. Heroin is different than marijuana, some kind of a plant that has had 0 deaths directly attributed to it. That's a different situation. But even heroin, if we're talking consenting adults, I mean, you can go buy alcohol. That's not illegal. That's caused way more murders than heroin. Way more. Alcohol's a drug, and because the government taxes it, all the statists are okay with it being sold to adults, even though it causes far more death than any of the other drugs. Oh, Miranda opening the floodgates here on Mindshock. Almost all women sell their bodies in one way or another. Wow. Going deep there, Miranda. Going deep. It's kind of hard to argue that when you say in one way or another. Yeah, it's tough. That is true, Pinto Sack. Drug dealers help the state keep power by sedating and ruining the lives of people. Not only that, they keep the gravy train coming by putting nonviolent offenders in prison. Jen A stating, the marriage bed is undefiled. That's a good point, Lord Zed. Lord says, Zed said, guys sell it to hospitals. Yeah, hospitals do have a lot of drugs. And hospitals get people hooked on painkillers too and ruin their lives. But it's technically legal, so all the status bootlickers don't have a problem with that. But some random guys in a park selling drugs to adults, that's the real, that causing far less death and destruction than all this so-called legal selling within the big pharma calls. Raised by gypsies with another great comment here. We are all addicts to something. Oh, that's a tough one. That's tough to argue against. We got a lot of comments coming in. I do want to finish this video here. Oh, Breek says, not selling to kids, just smoking around kids. I think we would all have a moral issue with that. Well, again, you're exposing them to something that could potentially be harmful. Secondhand smoke, etc. Just like eating candy in front of children and yay, it tastes good. You're wanting them to, that might lead to them getting curious about candy and then eating that poisonous sugar and causing all this great harm. Oh, caffeine. Yeah, that's another drug with some serious negative side effects. Pinto Sack, I don't think anybody got mad at you for... So Pinto Sack says, you guys got mad at me last time I brought up the idea of a benevolent dictator. Still think that would be better than what we have now. Imagine if he or she made great policies. I don't think anybody disputed that it wouldn't be better than the current system. But that still doesn't change the issue of it's someone playing God, hallucinating they have the right to rule others. That doesn't mean that wouldn't be better than the current situation. Oh yeah, Caitlin Fallow. I'll put up the chart right now. Yeah. The chart will explain itself for those curious about what the comment is. Okay. YouTube being really crazy. What the heck? YouTube doesn't want... Okay, hold on. Alright. Wow, this is crazy. It's like not showing the file to put it on the screen. What? Alright, I'm gonna have to like copy and paste it so it gets new metadata. Wow, this is crazy. Like YouTube is actively censoring images and live streams based on metadata. Has anybody made a podcast talking about that? That's crazy. I mean, this has happened before. I don't think I called it out like that. That's my theory, because sometimes when I copy, paste it, convert it to a different format, then it works. But yeah, here's the chart. Again, I do not claim anything is true or untrue. This is the number of mass shootings post-2012 Obama's modernization of the Smith-Mundt Act of 48, legalizing domestic propaganda. Oh, Breek says, so you would want the state to get involved then, Bruce? You mean when people are doing drugs around children? No. Why would the state get involved? You would have private parties that are non-corrupt and that don't have a monopoly on enforcing any kind of law and order, because then they'd be held accountable if they violated anybody's rights. So you'd have privatized police. They actually have that, I believe, in Minneapolis and a few other places. You literally pay them like $2, a lot less than what's extorted over the course of a year. And then there's a different private security or private police company could handle whatever at whatever time. It would be much cheaper and much more efficient, and nobody's forced to use them, so there's no fascism or monopoly involved. So it not only is it much cheaper, but the service would be much better. You wouldn't get all these rights violated and then people covering up for those violating the rights. So no, why would you ever want the corrupt state involved in anything? Is Obreak a statist? Are you a statist? Is that why you're asking those questions? Alright, anyway, let me get rid of this image here. No, I would not want the equivalent of those hallucinating that have the right to fascistically enforce anything. There's no equivalent of monopolized corruption. No. No equivalent of that. In free market capitalism, you have the option of utilizing whichever service you want. Are you kind of new to this debate? No, I am not saying police but not police. I'm saying private versus government. It sounds like you're a statist. When you go to like a bar or some establishment, I mean, yes, sometimes they call the cops, but in the moment, who enforces it? The private security, the bouncers. If they do a bad job, they get fired, or you have the right to go to a different, if you don't like the way you're treated, you can go get legal representation of your choice and sue them. Again, it's much more affordable when you're not taxed 50 billion times. So if there was no state, there would be no fiat currency, there would be no inflation devaluing your money every year. So people would actually be able to afford stuff. I mean, I went over I don't want to go into the economics of it because that's too deep. And we have to finish this video here. I did go into it. I think I actually went into it in the Pretend Society video. But I went into it in a few other videos. So you would actually be able to afford... Again, if you're going to like a club or a bar, you don't like how you're treated, you go to another one. When you're talking about an entire country, it's a little difficult to leave the country. They might not even let you do it unless you get the proper documents and you get extorted for the money to get those documents. Whereas in a free society, you're free to enter any bar or establishment or whatever. Or any hotel. The hotel has their private security. And private security has to do a good job, or A, they get fired, or B, if the management covers for them, the Yelp reviews are going to put that hotel out of business if their security is that bad, going around violating everybody's rights. Not only are they going to get sued, but the reviews are going to be so bad. That's why you have free market capitalism. The system we have right now is corporatism, for all the clueless goofs that think we have capitalism now. There is no capitalism now. It's corporatism. Obreak says, if someone stormed into my house, I was in force against it until police or whoever would come and take them away. Yeah, so if you had the option of several different private securities, you can call any of them. And you can go look up their reviews. Who has the best response times? So you'd have options. They're not just going to come in and fail to solve the crime like most current law enforcement in the United States.
The upstanding, church-going, law-abiding, tax-paying citizen who votes Democrat or Republican is far more despicable and a bigger threat to humanity than the most promiscuous, lazy, drug-snorting hippie. Why? Because the hippie is willing to let others be free, and the voter is not. The damage done to society by bad habits and loose morality is nothing compared to the damage done to society by the self-righteous violence committed in the name of the state. You imagine yourselves to be charitable and tolerant when you are nothing of the sort. Even the Nazis had table manners and proper etiquette when they weren't killing people. You think you're good people because you say please and thank you? You think sitting in that big building on Sunday makes you noble and righteous? The difference between you and a common thief is that the thief has the honesty to commit the crime himself, while you whine for government to do your stealing for you.
How powerful was that? The thief has the honesty to commit the crime himself, whereas voters do not. Because when you participate in voting, you want the money stolen, call it taxes, what you will, you want the money stolen and used for whatever you want it to be used for. There's no honesty there. Whereas the criminal, a private thief, regardless of how immoral the private thief is, the private thief is more honest. It's kind of hard to argue against that. The private thief is more honest. Nobody wants to think about that. What say the 13% statists that voted in the poll here? Does anybody have a rebuttal for what Larkin Rose just said about the honesty of private thieves versus voters? Bueller, anyone? Do any statists have a rebuttal for that? No rebuttals? Miranda asks, how honest, though, are they admitting to the theft? Well, it's not about what they say, it's about what they do. Whereas the thief isn't hired, well, some thieves might hire other people to steal for them, but he's making the point about, like, let's say pickpockets or muggers. They're honest enough to commit the crime themselves. So their actions are honest in terms of they're not pretending they're benefiting the person they're mugging. There's no illusion there. Like, when they put a gun in someone's face and want to take their money, there's no deception. It is exactly what it looks like. They're stealing your money. There's no deception in the theft. Caitlin says, spitting facts. Miranda has an emoji here, raising your hand. What does that mean? You have a question? I've never seen that emoji before. Just raising the hand. Does that mean you have a question? Oh, okay. Yeah. So where were the statists? 13% voted statist and nobody's bringing anything up. Okay.
The difference between you and the street thug is that the thug is open about the violence he commits, while you let others forcibly control your neighbors on your behalf. You advocate theft, harassment, assault, and even murder, but accept no responsibility for doing so. You old folks want the government to steal from your kids so you can get your monthly check. You parents want all your neighbors to be robbed to pay for your kids' schooling. You all vote for whichever crook promises to steal money from other people to pay for what you want.
Caitlin asks, what if you are for voting but against taxation? Well, what is voting? Voting, you want someone to control other people for you. Like, what system? Are you talking about some kind of voluntary government where you vote for a leader of a voluntary government that's not going to force anyone to do anything? If in the current system, if you're voting, then it doesn't matter whether you're for or against taxation, because even if you're against it, by voting, you're basically consenting that the people you're voting for represent you. So even if they are against taxation, the current system is taxation, so the taxation will continue, and they're going to choose what the stolen loot is used for. They're going to continue paying police officers to give people speeding tickets when there was no injured party, violating their right to travel, violating human rights. Oh, Greek said, the Greeks said must have rules to have freedom. I actually don't remember them saying that, but even if that's true, that doesn't mean you violate human rights. That doesn't mean a non-voluntary government is necessary. Common law is pretty good. If there is no injured party, there is no crime. If there is an injured party, again, a violation of rules, then that is addressed privately. Why would you need government, the number one cause of human death in human history, handling anything? Not just number one in human death, but number one in incompetence. Is there anything the government hasn't made less efficient? Everything from the Department of Education, the Department of Transportation. What has the government made not cost more and be worse than when it was privately handled?
You demand that those people who engage in behaviors you don't approve of be dragged off and locked up, but feel no guilt for the countless lives your whims have destroyed. You even call the government thugs your representatives, and yet you never take responsibility for the evil they commit. You proudly support the troops as they kill whomever the liars in D.C. tell them to kill, and you feel good about it. You call yourselves Christians or Jews or claim to follow some other religion, but the truth is what you call your religion is empty window dressing. What you truly worship, the God you really bow to, what you really believe in is the state. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not murder, unless you can do it by way of government. Then it's just fine, isn't it? If you call it taxation and war, it stops being a sin, right? After all, it was only your God that said you shouldn't steal and murder, but the state said it was okay. It's pretty obvious which one outranks the other in your minds. Despite all the churches, synagogues, and mosques we see around us, this nation has one God and only one God, and that God is called government.
Larkin dropping bombs. So Larkin Rose just called out 99% of people who claim to follow a different religion other than statism because they violate their own religion by endorsing government. And that's a very important point because all these so-called religious leaders, they want people to grovel at the boot of government in direct opposition to what their religious texts say, in direct opposition to the Ten Commandments. So I don't know if this quote is actually from Orwell, but the quote is, "A people that elect corrupt politicians are not victims, but accomplices." And I would actually change that. It doesn't matter if they're corrupt or not. They hallucinate to have the right to rule, and other people who support that hallucination vote for them. And so they are accomplices. All the blood is shared on their hands. Big fish, small pond. Yes, you can ask any question in the chat. I'm going to go Bible quote here that'll clearly illustrate this point Larkin is making here. Ephesians 6:12, "For our struggle is not against the flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world." I mean, that's just one of many. 1 Corinthians 2:5, "Your faith should not stand in the wisdom of men." So all these goofs scribbling things, calling them laws, all these politicians pretending to be wise and knowing what's best, faith should not stand in the wisdom of men. Government is representation of the alleged wisdom of men. So again, Larkin Rose laying the smackdown on all the religions that support statism being against their own religion. They are traitors to their own religions. Can anybody counterpoint that?
Jesus taught nonviolence and told you to love your neighbor, but the state encourages you to vote for people who will use the violence of government to butt into every aspect of everyone else's life. Which do you believe? To those about to stone a woman who had committed adultery, Jesus said, "Let him who is without sin cast the first stone." But the state says it's perfectly fine to lock someone up if they do something you find distasteful, such as prostitution. Which do you believe? The Christian God says, "Thou shalt not covet," but coveting is the lifeblood of the beast that is the state. You are taught to resent, despise, and hate anyone who has anything you don't have. You clamor for the state to tear other people down, steal their property, and give it to you. And you call that fairness. The Bible calls it coveting and stealing. You are not Christians. You are not Jews. You are not Muslims. And you certainly aren't atheists. You all have the same God, and its name is government. You're all members of the most evil, insane, destructive cult in history. If there ever was a devil, the state is it, and you worship it with all your heart and soul. You pray to it to solve every problem, to satisfy all your needs, to smite your enemies, and to shower its blessings upon you. You worship what Nietzsche called the coldest of all cold monsters, and you hate those of us who don't. To you, the greatest sin is disobeying your God, breaking the law, you call it, as if anyone could possibly have any moral obligation to obey the arbitrary commands and demands of the corrupt, lying, delusional megalomaniacs who infest this despicable town. Even your ministers, priests, and rabbis, more often than not, are traitors to their own religions, teaching that the commands of human authority should supersede adherence to the laws of the gods they say they believe in. Several years ago, I heard one pompous evangelical jackass in particular pontificating on the radio that anyone who disobeys the civil authority, be it a king or any other government, is engaging in rebellion against God. Those were the exact words he used. What if the government is doing something wrong? Well, this salesman for Satan opined, that is the business of those in government, and you are still obligated to obey. Everywhere you turn, be it the state or the church, the media or the schools, you are taught one thing above all else: the virtue of subjugating yourselves to mortals who claim to have the right to rule you. It is sickening the reverence with which you speak of the liars and thieves whose feet are so firmly planted on your necks. You call the congressmen and the judges honorable, and you swoon at the magnificence of the grandiose halls they inhabit, the temples they built to celebrate the domination of mankind. You feel pride at being able to say you once shook a senator's hand or saw the president in person. Ah, yes, the grand deity himself, His Royal Highness, the President of the United States of America. You speak the title as if you're referring to God Almighty. The vocabulary has changed a bit, but your mindset is no different from that of the groveling peasants of old who bowed low, faces in the dirt, with a feeling of unworthiness and humility when in the presence of whatever narcissist had declared himself to be their rightful lord and master. The truth of the matter, back then and today, is that these parasites who call themselves leaders are not superior beings. They are not great men and women. They are not honorable. They're not even average. The people who earn an honest living, from sophisticated millionaire entrepreneurs to illiterate day laborers doing the most menial tasks you can imagine, those people deserve your respect. Those people you should treat with courtesy and civility. But the frauds who claim the right to rule you and demand your subservience and obedience, they deserve only your scorn and contempt. Those who seek so-called high office are the lowest of the low. They may dress better, have larger vocabularies, and do a better job of planning out and executing their schemes, but they are no better than pickpockets, muggers, and carjackers. In fact, they are worse, because they don't want to rob you of just your possessions. They want to rob you of your very humanity, deprive you of your free will, by slowly leeching away your ability to think, to judge, to act, reducing you to slaves in both body and mind. And still you persist in calling them leaders. Leaders? Where is it that you think you're going exactly that would require you to have a leader? If you just live your own life and mind your own damn business, exercising your own talents, pursuing your own dreams, striving to be what you believe you should be, what possible use would you have for a leader? Do you ever actually think about the words that you hear, the words that you repeat? You parrot oxymoronic terms such as the leader of the free world, even pretending for a moment that there is some huge journey or some giant battle that everyone in the entire nation is undertaking together that would require a leader. Why would you ever think, even for a moment, that the crooks that infest this town are the sort of people you should listen to or emulate or follow anywhere? Somewhere inside your mostly dormant brains, you know full well that politicians are all corrupt liars and thieves, opportunistic con men, exploiters, and fearmongers. You know all this, and yet you still speak as if you are the ones who are the stupid, vicious animals, while the politicians are the great, wise role models, teachers, and leaders without whom civilization could not exist. You think these crooks are the ones who make civilization possible? What belief could be more absurd? Yet when they do their pseudo-religious rituals, deciding how to control you this week, you still call it law, and continue to treat their arbitrary demands as if they were moral decrees from the gods that no decent person would ever consider disobeying.
The other thing that's interesting is how the founding fathers had a completely different take on it. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God was actually considered to be on the official seal of the United States. Imagine if that had gone through. So all these clueless goofs, all these supposed religious men preaching religion in religious houses of worship or alleged religious houses of worship that are peddling to corrupt establishments, that are groveling at the boot of governments, are in direct violation of the religious tenets they claim to believe in and they claim to uphold. But that would have been cool if they actually did use rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God as the official seal.
You have become so thoroughly indoctrinated into the cult of state worship that you are truly shocked when the occasional sane person states the bleeding obvious. The mere fact that the political crooks wrote something down and declared their threats to be law does not mean that any human being anywhere has the slightest moral obligation to obey. Every moment of every day, in every location and every situation, you have a moral obligation to do what you deem to be right, not what some delusional bloated windbag says is legal. And that requires you to first determine right and wrong for yourself, a responsibility you spend much time and effort trying to dodge. You proclaim how proud you are to be law-abiding citizens and express your utter contempt for anyone who considers himself above your so-called laws. Laws that are nothing more than the selfish whims of tyrants and thieves. The word crime once meant an act harmful to another person. Now it means disobedience to any one of the myriad of arbitrary commands coming from a parasitical criminal class. To you, the term crime is nearly synonymous with the word sin, implying that the ones whose commands are being disobeyed must be something akin to gods, when in truth they are more akin to leeches. The very phrase, taking the law into your own hands, perfectly expresses what a sacrilege it is in your eyes for a mere human being to take upon himself the responsibility to judge right from wrong and to act accordingly, instead of doing what you do, unthinkingly obeying whatever capricious commands this cesspool of maggots spews forth. You glorify this criminal class as lawmakers and believe that no one is lower than a lawbreaker, someone who would dare disobey the politicians. Likewise, you speak with pious reverence of law enforcers, those who forcibly impose the politicians' every whim upon the rest of us. When the state uses violence, you imagine it to be inherently righteous and just, and if anyone resists, they are, in your eyes, contemptible lowlifes, lawless terrorist criminals. Like the lawless terrorist criminals who helped slaves escape the plantations. Like the lawless terrorist criminals who helped Jews escape the killing machine of the Third Reich. Like the lawless terrorist criminals who were crushed to death under the tanks of the Red Chinese government in Tiananmen Square. Like all the lawless terrorist criminals in history who had the courage to disobey the never-ending stream of tyrants and oppressors who have called their violence authority and law. And that includes the lawless terrorist criminals who founded this country. Everything you think you know is upside down, backwards, and inside out. But what has to take the cake, the height of your insanity, is the fact that you view as violent terrorists the only people on the planet who oppose the initiation of violence against their fellow men. Anarchists, voluntarists, and libertarians. We use violence only to defend ourselves against someone who initiates violence against us. We use it for nothing else. Meanwhile, your belief system is completely schizophrenic and self-contradictory. On the one hand, you teach the young slaves that violence is never the answer. Yet out of the other side of your mouths, you advocate that everyone and everything, everywhere and at all times be controlled, monitored, taxed, and regulated through the force of government. In short, you are teaching your children that the masters may use violence whenever they please, but the slave should never resist. You indoctrinate your children into a life of unthinking, helpless subservience. You are putting the chains around their little necks and fastening the locks tight. And worst of all, you feel good about it. Out of one side of your mouths, you condemn the evils of fascism and socialism and lament the injustices of the regimes of Hitler, Stalin, and Mao. While out of the other side of your mouths, you preach exactly what they did. The worship of the collective, the subjugation of every individual to that evil insanity that wears the deceptive label, the common good. You babble on and on about diversity and open-mindedness, and then beg your masters to regulate and control every aspect of everyone's lives, creating a giant herd of unthinking conformist drones. You wear different clothes and have different hairstyles, and you think that makes you different. Yet all your minds are enslaved to the same club of masters and controllers. You think what they tell you to think and do what they tell you to do while imagining yourselves to be progressive, thinking, and enlightened. From your position of relative comfort and safety, you now condemn the evils of other lands and other times while turning a blind eye to the injustices happening right in front of you. You tell yourself that had you lived in those other places, in those other times, you would have been among those who stood up against oppression and defended the downtrodden. But that is a lie. You would have been right there with the rest of the flock of well-trained sheep, loudly demanding that the slaves be beaten, that the witches be burned, that the nonconformists and rebels be destroyed. How do I know this? Because that is exactly what you are doing today.
And this was all before COVID. So how true his words ended up being on all the statist supporting scum, as they wanted everybody to subjugate themselves just because those who hallucinate they have the right to play God told them to do something. Any statists in the chat? Still no? No?
Today's injustices and oppressions are fashionable and popular, and those who resist them, you tell yourselves, are just malcontents and freaks, people whose rights don't matter, people who deserve to be crushed under the boot of authority. Isn't that right? You bunch of spineless, unthinking hypocrites, look in the mirror. Take a good look at what you imagine to be righteous and kind. You are the devil's plaything. The crowds of thousands wildly applauding the speeches of Adolf Hitler, that was you. The mob demanding that Jesus Christ be nailed to the cross, that was you. The white invaders who celebrated the wholesale slaughter of those godless redskins, that was you. The throngs filling the Colosseum, applauding as the Christians were fed to the lions, that was you. Throughout history, the perpetual suffering and injustice occurring on an incomprehensible scale, it was all because of people just like you. The well-trained, thoroughly indoctrinated conformists, the people who do as they're told, who proudly bow to their masters, who follow the crowd, believing what everyone else believes and thinking whatever authority tells them to think. That is you. And your ignorance is not because the truth is not available to you. There have been radicals preaching it for thousands of years. No, you are ignorant because you shun the truth with all your heart and soul. You close your eyes and run away when a hint of reality lands in front of you. You condemn as extremists and fringe kooks those who try to show you the chains you wear because you don't want to be free. You don't even want to be human. Responsibility and reality scare the hell out of you, so you cling tightly to your own enslavement and lash out at any who seek to free you from it. When someone opens the door to your cage, you cower back in the corner and yell, "Close it, close it." Well, some of us are finished with trying to save you. We've wasted enough effort trying to convince you that you should be free. All you ever do is spout back what your masters have taught you, that being free only leads to chaos and destruction, while being obedient and subservient leads to peace and prosperity. There are none so blind as those who will not see. And you nation of sheep, would rather die than see the truth.
So, that's probably one of the best speeches on statism that I've ever heard or seen. Again, nobody has presented any counterpoints. Just goofs like Tsutsaka hallucinating that, I know everybody's going to love. Whitsitt says this. I don't think it's his quote, though. Falsification is independent of replacement. So, like, what is the solution to all this? He's preaching hard, like people preaching hard against serial killers. Like, it's so bad. It's so bad. What's the alternative? You don't need an alternative, viable or not, to point out evil. You can ask any questions you want, Tsutsaka. You don't need an alternative. But that was another good example of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Now, for those, again, the problem with these malformed questions, the solution already exists and everybody lives it every day, because the laws against murder don't prevent murder. So all government does, the world will always be an unsafe place. The only thing government does is make it even more unsafe. So there's no alternative from reality. Reality is whatever it is. The alternative is to add less death, destruction, and theft. It's always going to be there. There's no magical alternative where it's going to be utopia. Like, what are you asking? Asking a question demonstrating your incompetence is Dunning-Kruger, ironically, which you just proved again with that comment. So they can make all the laws they want against theft and murder. How's that worked out recently? Or ever? I mean, the only thing that's different is some people get punished after the fact sometimes. There's no prevention of the murder. Murder is illegal, happens every day. Drinking and driving's illegal, happens every day. The victims are still the victims. The only difference is sometimes they catch some of the people, sometimes. And they can punish them after the fact. But there's no creating safety. Safety doesn't exist. I mean, perhaps the best quote on this topic is Benny Franklin. Let's go to good old Benny here. People willing to trade their freedom for temporary security deserve neither and will lose both. Because the security is not real anyway. There's a few iterations of this quote. Again, no idea what's true or not. What's important is the concept behind these alleged quotes. Slightly different iterations. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. One of my favorites is this one. Because a lot of goofs that actually think democracy's a good thing. I mean, it's kind of weird. Like, how brain dead do you have to be to think that democracy's a good thing? Benjamin Franklin, democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch. Liberty is a well-armed lamb contesting the vote. It's a nice touch with those Uzis. Not just any weapons, but Uzis. Axis Monday says, your Dahmer 7-hour deep dive is a masterpiece, Bruce. You and JR should do one on Leonard Lake and Charles Eng, please. We might. JR's been AWOL. But yeah, just adding extra violence and theft by having government achieves what? For the people that are genuinely curious about that, you know, basically the alternative is a free market. Pretty much what was here, even under King George, it was still relatively free. You had private individuals, private citizens, all being privately contracted for all the essentials. The roads, the railways, whatever. Everything was private, everything was higher quality and less money because you didn't have these monopolized contracts. Although they started, I mean, you know, whenever you have a government, you have a little bit of that. But when it was minimal government, it was still relatively free. You didn't have to, you weren't extorted. You know, people weren't slaves they weren't slaves to this extent pre-income tax. Here's another question that no statists are able to answer for some reason. I've posed this question to every statist I have ever talked to. I haven't gotten a single answer on this one. Not one answer. Any statists in the chat, feel free to give your answer here. If YouTube lets me put up this image. That's so weird. Okay, here we go. If stealing 100% of the product of someone's labor is slavery, at what percentage is it not slavery? And now to preempt the goofs that are going to start hallucinating something about a social contract, what makes a contract valid? Many works of political philosophy make reference to a social contract, the idea that governments arose from a mutual university recognized need and were created so they could benefit all. But no one has ever pointed to any historical evidence of such a social contract actually being formulated or agreed to. A contract has no validity if nobody ever agreed to it. The fiction of the social contract has been used to promote a more politically important idea that the state is a voluntary, necessary, and inevitable arising institution created for the betterment of humanity. A special status for this institution arising from a fictional agreement is necessary to confer a different ethical code on state actors than that which pertains to mere ordinary humans. Theft, kidnapping, and murder become taxation, incarceration, and waging war. Without this ethical double standard, no state's existence could ever be justified. Furthermore, a contract is not valid under coercion. So basically saying if you don't pay your taxes, or if you don't get your W-2 or whatever tax form, you're not going to get the job. That's coercion, because then you're going to starve and die because you can't work. So that's coercion. Saying you're going to be put in a cage and armed terrorists are going to come and put you in a cage and steal your house and your stuff if you don't give them money, like some kind of mafia thing, that's coercion. That's not a valid contract of any kind. So I just wanted to preempt the statist goofs there, because they always go with the, oh, it's some kind of social contract. Yeah, Blue Unicorn in the chat saying, me and 500 of my friends say you all owe me $10,000. We voted. And then some costume terrorists with guns are going to enforce that vote on you. What are you going to do about it? If you believe in democracy, all you got to do is boot. I mean, what alternative do you have if you're a believer in democracy and statism? Run Boston Bear, the name of that Larkin Rose speech is Message to the Voting Cattle. There's two versions, a short one and a longer one, but just search Message to the Voting Cattle and it'll come up. So, yeah, I mean, if nobody has any other questions, that'll be it. I don't really want to go into the origins of Adolf. I guess I'll do one short little thing here. Now that we've established the evils of statism, and nobody can answer the question of what percentage is it not slavery to steal the profit of someone's labor. Exactly, Blue Unicorn. No contract is valid if obtained by force, fraud, or coercion. Hello, Boggin. You're a little late to the chat here. Alright, I'll do one little thing on Adolf history. And we will see if we get the stream shut down or not. This isn't a deep dive. Someone asked the question at the beginning. I forget who. I'm just going to put up some news article curiosities regarding World War II and the Rothschild Bank for the perusal of the viewers. Again, I do not claim anything is true or untrue. And again, Rothschilds own these newspapers. So again, I'm not claiming that what's in the newspaper is not propaganda. I think some of these alternative WW2 people, they don't understand that this could have been a false flag setup. Judea did not declare war on Germany, but they did print that in the newspaper just to facilitate all of the propaganda. Actually, I should probably tease a George Bush little find here that I don't see anybody talking about. I think YouTube's gonna get real glitchy, but let's see. I think I'm just gonna say this. I'm just gonna leave this here. I don't know how much I can say about this image. I probably shouldn't actually say anything about it, but I'm gonna put it on the screen, see if the stream gets shut down because of it. So, maybe I'll say a little bit about it. So, in the back is Joseph Mengele. So, this is approximately 1938. This is the Sheriff family. George H. Sheriff, otherwise known as George H. Bush, this is Mengele. And in the center right, in the uniform, is supposedly George H. Scherf Jr. and his father, George H. Scherf Sr. Does everybody see them? Do I need to put a circle for the people who can't see them? So these are the Bushes, supposedly with this other name, with Joseph Mengele, all chummy. This stream's getting shut down, isn't it? That's the Bushes, and above them is Mengele. Interesting. So in 1938 here, for whatever reason, they're going by Scherf. So Skorzeny is here as well. And Skorzeny was Hitler's bodyguard, who they acquired under Project Paperclip. So what's also curious, oh man, I don't know if this has ever been revealed before, but let's okay, you guys want more receipts probably. So for those saying that Skorzeny wasn't Hitler's bodyguard, here's another receipt. Here. Furthermore, here's the big mind shock I'm going to close this live Q&A on, because I don't know if anybody has ever seen this photo before. Let's drop it like it's hot here on Mindshock, because this is Mindshock. Don't be surprised if the stream gets shut down and is never seen again. This is Nikola Tesla. Right here. This is Nikola Tesla right here with Otto Skorzeny and his trusted assistant here, George H. Scherf Sr., a.k.a. George Bush Sr., is Nikola Tesla's assistant with Adolf Hitler's bodyguard, Otto Skorzeny, and you have Mengele smiling like a diabolical lunatic in the background here. Has anybody put forth this conspiracy connection yet from Adolf Hitler, Skorzeny, his bodyguard, the Bushes, and Nikola Tesla? Is that not known? Is that not commonly known? Supposedly, Nikola Tesla, this is photo with King Peter II of Yugoslavia, Hotel New Yorker, July 15th, 1942, with Nikola Tesla and his trusted assistant, according to Otto Skorzeny, is George H. Scherf Sr., who just happens to look identical to George H. Bush Sr. And yeah, there's actually plenty of receipts. I'm not going to go into them here, and I am going to end the podcast there before we all get shut down. But I hope that was mind-shocking enough for many, and there is, of course, plenty more to come. Hope everybody enjoyed another edition of the Mindshock podcast, and you got a dose of what you would expect here on Mindshock. We never know where any of these are going to go, taking any and all questions in typical Mindshock fashion with logic and reason at the forefront. You want to help support the Mindshock podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.